Hello, friends. Tonight I thought we would read another entry in the book of Mysteries of the Unexplained in the lead up to Halloween. Tonight's story is The Ghosts of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. After Chicago gangsters lured their rivals into an ambush, they thought that they had enjoyed their last laugh. What they failed to consider was the existence of another syndicate, one that could reach out from beyond the grave. Requiem for Racketeers. During the Roaring '20s, Al Scarface Capone ruled Chicago. Be it gambling, prostitution, bootleg whiskey, or anything else illegal or immoral, Capone and his gangsters controlled it. Almost no one, including the police, dared to stand up to Capone and his men, because resistance certainly meant winding up on the wrong end of a gun. Still, one man was determined to dethrone Capone: George Bugs Moran. Moran and his North Side gang had been slowly muscling their way into Chicago in an attempt to force Capone and his men out. As 1929 began, rumors indicated that Capone was planning to, quote, take care of Moran. As the days turned into weeks and nothing happened, Moran and his men began to relax and let their guard down. That would prove to be a fatal mistake. Gathering for the slaughter. On February 14, 1929, 6 members of the North Side Gang gathered inside the SMC Cartage Company at 2122 North Clark Street. With them was mechanic John May, who was not a member of the gang, but had been hired to work on a member's car. May had brought along his dog, Highball, and had tied him to the bumper of the car while he worked. At approximately 10:30 a.m., 2 cars parked in front of the Clark Street entrance of the building. 4 men, 2 dressed as police officers, and 2 in street clothes, got out and walked into the warehouse. Murderers in disguise. Based on physical evidence, once the men were inside, it is believed they announced that the warehouse was being raided and ordered everyone to line up facing the back wall. Believing that the uniformed men were indeed police officers, all of Moran's men, along with John May, did as they were told. Suddenly, the supposed raiders began shooting, and in a hail of shotgun fire and more than 70 submachine gun rounds, the 7 men were brutally murdered. After the slaughter was over, the 2 men in street clothes calmly walked out of the building with their hands up, followed by the 2 men dressed as police officers. To everyone nearby, it appeared as though a shootout had occurred and that the police had arrived and arrested 2 men. Nobody shot me. Minutes later, neighbors called police after hearing strange howls coming from inside the building. When the real police arrived, they found all 7 men mortally wounded. One of the men, Frank Gusenberg, lingered long enough to respond to one question. When authorities asked who shot him, Gusenberg responded, "Nobody shot me." The only survivor of the melee was Highball the dog. When word of the massacre hit the newswire, everyone suspected that Al Capone had something to do with it. Although Capone swore that he wasn't involved, most people felt that he had orchestrated the whole thing as a way to get rid of Moran and several of his key men. There was only one problem. Bugs Moran wasn't in the warehouse at the time of the shooting. Why he wasn't there is not clear, but one thing is certain. February 14th, 1929 was Bugs Moran's lucky day. Police were unable to pin anything related to the crime on Capone, although they did charge two of his gunmen, John Scalise and Jack Machine Gun McGurn, with the murders. Scalise never saw the inside of the courthouse. He was murdered before his trial began. Charges against McGurn were eventually dropped. However, he was murdered 7 years later, on Valentine's Day, in what appeared to be retaliation for the 1929 massacre. Haunted by the truth. Publicly, Al Capone may have denied any wrongdoing, but it appears that the truth literally haunted him until his dying day. In May 1929, Capone was incarcerated at Philadelphia's Eastern State Penitentiary, serving a 1-year stint for weapons possession. Such a span was considered easy time by gangster standards, but Capone's time inside would be anything but. Haunted by the ghosts of James Clark, who was killed in the St. Valentine's Day massacre, Capone was often heard begging Jimmy to leave him alone. The torment continued even after Capone was released. One day, Capone's valet, Jaime Cornish, saw an unfamiliar man in Capone's apartment. When he ordered the man to identify himself, the mysterious figure slipped behind a curtain and vanished. Capone insisted that Cornish, like himself, had seen the ghost of Clark. Some say that Clark didn't rest until Capone passed away on January 25, 1947. Ghosts still linger. Over the years, the warehouse in which the St. Valentine's Day massacre took place transformed into a morbid tourist attraction, as curiosity seekers felt compelled to see the site for themselves. It became a piece of Chicago history. When the building was demolished in 1967, the wall against which the 7 doomed men stood was dismantled brick by brick and sold at auction. An enterprising businessman purchased the bricks and eventually sold each one, but many of them were returned soon after. According to unhappy customers, their luck took a nosedive after they purchased the ghoulish souvenirs. Illness, financial ruin, divorce, and even death resulted, causing the frightened owners to believe that the bricks were cursed. As for the infamous massacre site, nothing much is left there today. A nursing home owns the land and has left the area vacant, save for a parking lot and a few trees. Some people have reported hearing gunfire and screams as they pass by the site, and people walking their dogs near the lot claim that their furry friends pull on their leashes and try to get away from the area as soon as possible. Perhaps they sense the ghostly remnants of the body of the bloody slaughter that took place there so many years ago.